Welcome to Things My Mother Forgot to Mention.
The podcast where we say everything our mothers didn't.
I'm Jan, a trauma therapist and author turned rogue storyteller, here to talk openly about the body, aging, and all the, wait, what? Moments of womanhood.
And I'm Patty, an online business and tech nerd whose purpose is to elevate the voices of women in our world and who doesn't believe in taboo topics. Things My Mother Forgot to Mention is the podcast for every woman who's ever said, wait, why didn't anyone mention this to me?
Join Jan and Patty, two outspoken, curious, outrageous women, as they dive headfirst into a messy, magical, and often WTF realities of aging, health, and quite simply being a woman.
From rogue chin hairs and vaginal thinning
to mental health, perimenopause, and scalp cancer. Yes, really.
Nothing is off limits. It's funny, it's raw, it's real talk your mother definitely skipped.
Let's get into it.
Hello, Jan.
Hello, Patty. That's a bright, cheery voice.
I always get so much joy when we do these. So
happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good today. Things are all coming together.
Good. You've got
And how about you?
I'm good. You have a knee replacement coming up pretty soon.
2 weeks from today.
I know, which is when this episode will come out. So,
oh, great. I probably won't be listening to it, but
probably
anyway.
not. That's fair. I'll allow it.
So I understand we have a guest who is with us today.
We do. Yeah. We have Stephanie Baker, and we're going to talk today about her experiences with a traumatic birth experience. And I think we'll chat with you a little bit about yours. But I'm going to start by reading a little bit about Stephanie.
Great.
Stephanie Baker is a licensed trauma counselor and coach out of Mason, Ohio, who runs her own practice called Change Heals, where she helps clients untangle the kind of pain most of us were taught to just power through. She's a licensed professional clinician counselor, EMDR trained, an Army veteran who served in Iraq, and she's a certified trainer and member of the leadership group at the Healing Our Core Issues Institute. If you've read Gifts from a Challenging Childhood, written by our own Jan Bergstrom, you've actually already met a piece of her work. One of her original techniques is in there in the 2025 edition. So she's not just teaching the model, she's helping shape it. Stephanie is the therapist a lot of us wish we'd had earlier. She's deeply relational, human first, clinician second, and she shows up in the room as a real person, not a role. What she does so beautifully is help clients understand themselves in ways they were never given permission to before. The patterns, the protective parts, the why underneath the behavior, she helps her clients see all of it with curiosity instead of shame. She works with people healing developmental trauma, the stuff our mothers definitely forgot to mention, and she does it with humor, heart, and zero pretense. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. Welcome.
That's great bio there, Stephanie. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. So, talk to us a little bit about you have how many kids do you have? One child?
Biologically, I have one child. I do have two stepdaughters that I count as my own, but they did not come from my body. So I birthed one.
Yeah.
And how old are the two stepdaughters you have?
My stepdaughters are 27 and 24.
Oh, wow.
And then my son, who is biologically mine, is 9.
And do the two stepdaughters live with you too, or not?
When they were younger, they're now living their own lives, but they lived with us part-time between their mom and my husband, their dad.
Great. Well, I know you've joined us today because, as you said, we're talking about mama trauma. And, not everybody has the same experience having a baby, that's for sure. And, some women I've talked to before, it's easy peasy. They had no problem. And some other women, that's not always the case. And so I believe we've had you here, and maybe I'll say a little bit about my experience, but
Yeah.
my experience was all of 35 years ago. So it's a little bit longer ago.
But like you said earlier, it's something you never forget.
It's as amen to that. So,
Yeah. So what did you what did your mother ever share with you about giving birth and being pregnant and labor? What was that like for you? Or did you go into it being like, "Oh, let's see what happens."
So my mom, so before I was born, my mom had what the story I was told was my mom had a stillborn at about 5 months.
ooh,
That's all I knew. And I honestly, I think that's all she knew, right? Because again, 44 years ago when she had the stillborn, I don't think they had the resources, the knowledge, the information, or the compassionate care for the mom
right.
the same way that they do now.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I knew is that she had a stillborn at 5 months. And then a year later, I come along and her birth with me was her out of the other, so she had three more after me. Um, Her birth with me, from the stories I've been told, was the hardest because of her previous loss. They had her like bedridden. They just wanted to make sure everything went well once she
Mm.
went into labor. And so like she couldn't get up and walk around to make everything progress. Um, so that was the hardest part for her, was kind of being bedridden with it.
Hmm.
And I mean, all in all, I had a good birth. Everything went fine, healthy, delivered on my mom's birthday, by the way. I'll add that little caveat in there, which was really has always been a cool thing for us to share a birthday. But then she had three more babies, and the way she tells it is each birth got easier and easier. They got quicker and quicker, and she just started popping them out. Like I think her labor with me was like 5 hours, and it got shorter each time.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
And so, um, I mean, to my knowledge, she did it all without any like an epidural or any pain med. So that was my intent going in, was I want to do this as natural as possible. I'm not going to oppose help if needed.
Right.
But I wanted to try and be as just natural as possible. Um, when you go in and you talk to your doctors when you find out you're pregnant and tell them that's your plan, and they're like, okay, and there's not really much to talk about when you're really, really early on. So yeah, that was about the information I had going in. Now, obviously, I knew a lot of other women who had had traumatic experiences and things like that, but from my mom, she told me what she knew and what she experienced, and that was what she had.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your pregnancy like?
Hmm. So the first 6 months, Patty, was beautiful.
Mm.
Really? You're kidding
I
me.
had what I would call an ideal pregnancy until I didn't.
Mm.
Um, for the first 6 months, it was like I had this belly, well, a smally growing belly, and I barely ever had any. I mean, I didn't have morning sickness. What I ended up having was like at around 8 o'clock at night, I felt a little gross and I just wanted to lay down and watch TV, which for everything I've heard with moms and pregnancy, it
Right.
was like so, so, so lucky. Um, it got to a point where I was like, I wish sometimes I could just take this belly off and kind of just sit it to the side and go help my husband do the yard work, because I'm not allowed to do all that stuff when I'm pregnant, because he was doing like heavy lifting and things. And I was like, and then I'll just put it back on when I'm done.
I
Because
know.
my body felt fine. I felt capable. I just wasn't allowed to do the things, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the first 6 months were great. And then one day I was like, it was like a day away from that appointment you have where you do all the glucose stuff for gestational diabetes. And my calves and my ankles just started to swell really bad.
Mm.
And, I was on the phone with my mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, mom, look. And I was, video calling her, and I showed her my ankles, and like I had no difference between like my knee to my ankle. It
Oh
was
my
all the
goodness.
same
Wow.
size,
Hmm.
just so swollen. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, finally, pregnancy is affecting me, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Women, their ankles swell, all that stuff sounds normal to me from everything that I've heard. And my mom kind of went, when are you seeing the doctor? Tomorrow? Okay, good. You need to make sure you let them know, like, she kind of just had a little bit of this panic, and I don't
Yeah.
know if she was making connections or not. We never really talked about it, but I remember her and my colleagues the next day at work being like, you need to go talk to your doctor. Nobody ever said words around this is concerning. They
Right.
just had that tone, right?
Stephanie, how old were you when you were when you were pregnant?
34.
Okay.
Mm.
Because,
So I was
like,
older.
yeah, you were older mom. Okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so
I'm
I was
sorry.
definitely an older mom. Not quite geriatric,
Geriatric.
which I would be considered now if I had a baby. Um, but yeah, on the older end. And so when I went to the doctor, they took me in, did my blood pressure, set you down, have you drink that whatever stuff, and I'm just in the waiting room waiting. And they call me back, and my doctor says, "Did you drive yourself here today?" I was like, "Yeah, I came from work." And she's like, "Okay, I want you to get in the car and I want you to go straight to the hospital, which was like about 15 minutes away. And your husband's going to meet you there." And I'm just like,
What?
and she also, not wanting to induce panic, wasn't telling me a lot. So I perfectly am fine, get in my car, drive to the hospital, go, they want me to check myself in. And then I get put on that magnesium drip, which I don't know if either one of you have any knowledge or experience about that,
No.
but
No.
that is horrible. And then I felt like death
Mm.
Was it an
because what
IV magnesium or was it like through the mouth?
no IV.
Okay.
Um, because my apparently my blood pressure was skyrocketed. I
Oh.
had preeclampsia.
Right.
Oh.
And so I was basically going to be hospitalized until the baby came. Now that could have been, the rest of my pregnancy, the next few months that I should have had, or the next day, right? Because with preeclampsia, there's not really a threat to the baby, it's more the threat to the mom.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Um, what we
What
ended up,
is preeclampsia?
it's the blood pressure. Your blood pressure skyrockets to where you could have a stroke.
Oh, that.
And
Oh
the
boy.
only way to bring the blood pressure down, if medications and things aren't working, is to take the baby out. So when I got to the hospital, they put me on that medicine. It dropped my blood pressure so quick that I ended up throwing up and felt like death
Wow.
because I finally was dropping back down to normal. I was able to maintain a decent blood pressure for about 5 days. So
In the
my son
hospital, you stayed in the hospital those
stayed
five
in the
days?
hospital. Yep. Um, and they finally got to a point where they're like, we've got to get the baby out because we can't get this to come down and it's been too long and we're afraid you'll have a stroke.
And you're 6 months in at this point.
I'm 6 months in. He
Wow.
was born at 28 weeks and 5 days. So that
Wow.
was the 5 days I was in the hospital. Um, and of course, once he was born, emergency C-section, everything, blood pressure went back down, everything was maintained, and he thankfully was a very, very healthy baby. They gave me shots when I was in the hospital that help his lungs develop.
Yep.
Mm.
Um, and so he came out breathing on his own at 20,
Great.
which is the biggest concern at that age. Um, and did really, really well and just proceeded to grow and bloom and be amazing from there. We had some other trauma, which isn't specifically related to the birth. He, about a week after he was born, he developed a scalding, what they call scalding staph.
Mm.
So it's an infection that basically 80% of his body became covered in burns.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
And they
no.
have to treat it
Oh,
like they do at Shriners for burn victims. And the amazing angel nurses that I had, one of them was doing training with the burn unit, and she was like his head nurse, and she was treating him. And so he was wrapped up like a mummy. And I told my husband, like, he will never be a mummy for Halloween. Like, this will be such a
Oh,
triggering thing for me, right? Um, and he has one scar, and it is
wow.
actually not even from his burns. It's actually from some scar tissue from one of the IV spots that he had in his foot. But it's
wow.
amazing.
That is amazing.
Horrible to live through, hugely traumatic at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and the big piece of this is that what I found out um, going forward after my son was born and things is that my mom had preeclampsia.
I was going to say, it's just like what happened to your mom, right?
Yes.
But they didn't know it back then, right?
They
Yep.
didn't know it back then. She didn't get to meet the baby there. I mean, it was just a very different world.
Yeah.
And
Right.
again, I think a lot of information she didn't know. But again, just not having anybody like name these things for you, right? When
Yeah.
you're in that moment was very disorienting and discombobulating to not understand what was happening until it was
Yeah.
happening.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's smart that she just sort of calmly was like, so you should drive to the hospital now. I mean, that was
right.
my sister-in-law had preeclampsia with my niece, and so that was my first thought as well. When you said that, I was like, that sounds like preeclampsia because a very common symptom of that, and it is so scary. That's so
Now,
scary.
do some people actually live through preeclampsia and take the baby to term and have the baby, or does it, Stephanie, do they usually have to have a C-section emergency? Do you
I
know?
don't know the statistics on
Mhm.
it, but I know, I mean, their intention in the hospital was to keep me
To keep you
medicated as
until you
long as
could carry the
possible.
baby.
I
You're
My
mean, that's
safe.
what they
sister-in-law
want.
didn't have a C-section with my niece, but she was a preemie, my niece.
Did
So
did she have to deliver soon or
I
she?
can't remember. I feel like she had it for a little bit, and I think they must have maintained her. And I also don't believe she was in the hospital the entire time that she had it. And so this would be 18 years ago. My niece is like 18.
Mm,
So, um, but definitely my niece was premature quite a
Mhm.
bit. And so, because I remember she was like the size of a Sprite can. That was the joke at the time is like she was the size
right.
of a Sprite can. And she now is like, I think because of that, she's like just 5 feet or something. She's definitely a little stunted in like her size and stuff like that. But um yeah, so some people I think I don't know if they go to term. It would be interesting to research and learn more about, but I do know that they don't all have emergency sections
Mhm.
necessarily.
Right. Wow. So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I'm not laughing about this, but where you said you wanted to be able to take the baby off and put her to the side and go work in the garden,
Yeah, I had,
I guess it kind of happened sooner than you realized. That's
yeah. Mhm.
horrible. It's like, oh,
Yeah, you know how like
we
certain
be
moms,
careful what we wish for.
yes, exactly. Some moms get to that point where they're like, they're gonna evict the baby.
Vic,
Yeah.
you're out of here.
Mine just terminated his lease early.
Right. Right.
He's like,
And the
I'm good. I'm
yeah,
How,
ready.
how much did he weigh when he was born, Stephanie?
2 pounds and 5 ounces.
Oh my
Oh, so
gosh.
size of a Sprite can.
Yes. When
Yeah.
you said that, I was
Oh
like, yeah, yeah,
Yep,
we
yep,
didn't
that
we didn't use
tracks.
that analogy, but that is he was so tiny and
Yeah.
like his arms and his legs were like literally like my finger.
Yeah.
They were so skinny. We said he looked like a chicken wing where you ate the bone, you ate it down to the
Oh,
bone, and
oh,
he was just a little chicken wing. Um, that he's so tiny and his
Wow.
skin was almost kind of that luminescent. It hadn't quite
Oh,
formed and shaped yet. But I mean, he was opening his eyes.
that's
He
amazing.
had was on oxygen because they wanted to help give his lungs rest, but he didn't
Yeah.
have to be. He was breathing on his own. Um, and I hear all the time that preemies often are smaller, stunted.
Hmm.
And my son is like his height is off the charts on
oh, nice.
yeah. So he was pretty much caught up by everything size and development wise by 6 months, which was amazing.
That's
Yeah.
Um,
amazing.
so huge
So you
Wow.
blessing.
decided not to have any more children. Is that?
That my husband, that was so traumatic for him. It was terrifying the thought of having another child because
Bet.
he almost in of course the timing of all of this was 2 months after he lost his father
Uh,
Oh,
and he
wow.
almost was losing his child and his wife.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so that was and still is a huge um wounding for him.
yeah.
And what we found out after my son was born, which we would not have known, there was no way to know, is that there were gases building up in the umbilical cord.
Mm.
Ooh,
And so if he hadn't been delivered when he was, he would have gone into,
stillbirth, kind of coming,
he could have, there
dying.
would have been some sort of traumatic, we've got to deliver him now. And if I wasn't at the hospital, he probably wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
So the fact that I went into preeclampsia and that drove the birth actually probably saved his life.
Oh my.
And that so quickly that you happened to have a doctor's appointment the next day and that you had people that were like,
So
this,
many
you
things
should like,
aligned. Yep.
yeah, I
So
mean, a lot
such
of
a
people might
blessing
have
in
just
disguise.
sat with that and
Mhm.
been like, oh, well, hey, I finally am feeling my birthness and, hung
Yes,
out for another week or something. And
exactly.
yeah,
I'm like, it's 6 months. I should start feeling pregnant.
yeah.
Um,
So with
it-
the exception of that, you kind of had a pretty ideal pregnancy through the whole
exactly.
way until the very end there, the last
Yeah,
Exactly.
a
week. So,
traumatic birth,
Yeah.
right?
And
yeah.
what they told me after he was born is that there's no, like, it's not genetic. Just because my mom had it didn't mean I would have it.
Mm,
Oh, interesting.
And you can have it once and never have it again, which is what my mom did, right? She had one and then had four healthy babies.
right.
Um, and there's no real way for them, to my knowledge, at least back when my son was born 9 years ago, there's no real way to determine if it's going to happen or predict it. There's just
Right.
treatment.
Yeah,
Um,
Hmm.
and I think for me, it was struggling with the idea of the fact that I was grieving the last few months of my pregnancy and grieving having a normal birth, right?
Mm,
And, my
yeah.
husband would say, well, most women would love to not have had contractions and all the things. And I'm like, and I'm also a mom who's never had a contraction. Like I've had
Yeah.
a son.
oh
Because I
right.
remember them coming into my room and I would be like, they're like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm having pain right here. And they're like, is it a contraction? And at one point I got so fed up with them asking me that question. I
Will
was
you
like, I
stop?
don't know. I've never had one. Tell me what it's supposed to feel like.
Like, give me a break here, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm like, you tell me if it's a contraction. I don't know. I'm the patient. And
Yeah.
so I think there was a lot of grief and then the confusion of like the shoulds, Jan, right? With the shame of should I even be grieving
Mm,
um
Right.
something like that.
right. Well,
Shooting yourself to death is what we call it.
Exactly.
yeah, and not only that, but those last few months of the pregnancy where a lot of people are like, I don't know where you were in your process, but as somebody who's never had children but have been around people and watched the things, but like you're getting the nursery ready and you're like, you're having a baby moon, which is a thing people do now,
Yep.
or but
A
Yep.
but
baby
like
who?
a baby moon where you like
Like a
go and have a
honeymoon, but it's
little,
before the baby comes.
yeah, like your last
Oh,
time
oh,
alone.
I
But
get it.
point being, like, you're really starting to nest even more, and you're like getting in that final period where you're like, this is, and you didn't have that. You didn't have that period of time of the final building excitement and also being like, get out of me, like like
Well, and my baby shower was after he was born.
right.
He would, and the in
Yeah.
the worst the worst part, I don't want to even say that, but one of the difficult parts of that is that he was in the NICU,
Right.
right? So he wasn't even born in with me at home where I got to show him to people. Like he
Right,
was still at the NICU while
Yeah.
I'm at home having a baby shower. And
Wow.
it was complicated. There was a lot of
Yeah.
complex emotions and confusing emotions that went along with all of that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Grief makes
guilt.
sense.
I
Yeah.
think the guilt of I couldn't keep him in, especially once he got a
Oh,
staph
I'm not a
infection.
normal mother. I'm not a good mother or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guilt of like if he were inside of me, he wouldn't have the staph infection right now.
Right,
Right. And so
Mm.
my body couldn't handle that. And he had to come out, which we knew he had to come out anyway because of the gases building up now, retrospectively. But guilt doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna play up in your brain and mess with things. And there was a lot that was
wow.
wrapped up in all
Well,
of
we
that.
have a lot of parallels actually in birth
Yeah.
stories we do. I mean, I don't know. Some women I've talked to, they love being pregnant, and that was never my experience.
Mm.
It was like torture for me. It was like, oh, this is torture. And I was just thinking what you were saying about your mom and having a stillborn. My mother, her first son she had died at birth. And
Mm.
so, and of course, the story they gave me was he was a big baby and the doctor used forceps and collapsed his lungs and he died.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
So my mother, no wonder she was trying to kill herself all the time. She was very
Wow.
depressed. I mean, I'm
Wow.
laughing at this, but I just put that together. I was thinking, well, no wonder she was so depressed. Anyway, but so she had that trauma and so then she had my brother and then she had me and then I had a younger brother. I have a younger brother too. But he was born his name was Craig, and I think died a couple of days later. So that was very traumatic for her. And I was thinking, now me, I carried my son. This is my first son till I was to term, completely to term, and I was so big. Like I used to be a dancer, and I weighed like 120 pounds when I was really and I weighed 190 pounds. That's how much I weighed.
Wow.
Wow.
I was so uncomfortable. I remember, sitting, being so big that I would just put my plate on my belly and eat like, it was a TV tray. It's like, I mean, that's crazy, and really feeling so big, and
Yeah.
it's just I'm not used to that. And it was torture getting around places and everything. And he wasn't born until in January 13th. So, is that when your son's
My
born?
son's birthday's January 12th, Jan.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
Wow.
January 13th is when he was born.
He was
And
due April 2nd.
oh, right. Oh, he was due April 2nd, but he decided to come January 12th. That's right. Oh my
Wanted to be a
gosh.
Capricorn.
Yeah. So, is that what January is? Capricorn?
The
Okay,
first
so
part of January, yeah,
the
until the
first part,
20th.
yeah, the 13th. So, and like I said, the weight gain and not being able to move around in winter, getting behind driving, it was just, it's so uncomfortable. And I had nausea for the first 4 months with both of my sons,
Mhm.
Mm.
just nauseous. And I kept thinking, this is going to be over some point, but it went on for about four months. So,
Oof.
so tough. And I think, you gotta, I think men, here I'm gonna go on my men thing, is men have no idea what it's like to have your body hijacked for like 9 months or six
Yeah.
months and feeling so out of control. They're just thinking, it's like, oh, a bun in the oven, you take it out of the oven, I'm like, no, it's not like that. I gotta put some humor to this because other than that, I probably would cry about it. But so when and unfortunately, back in my mom's day, they used to put him to sleep. Was your mother put to sleep, Stephanie?
I don't think so. Not that I've ever been
See,
told.
because my I'm a little bit older than you are, like twice. And so my mom, let's see, she was born in 25, and let's see, maybe 35, 40, 1940. Maybe she was really young, like 21 when she had her first child. Uh, and they put him to sleep. They
Really?
Wow.
they roll them into an operating room, and God only knows what they do, but they put you to sleep, and they
Whoa.
must somehow have used to induce the baby and have the baby born. But she was never awake for any of them. But I, of
Wow.
course, we had my son in the 90s, and in the 90s, everybody was into let's do it naturally, let's have the full experience, man. And I'm thinking I'm going to have the full experience.
Oh.
Well, that was really, I wish I had never done that, but because now I talk to my girlfriends who are having kids, their kids are having kids, and they're all like, give me that epidural, I don't want to feel this. I just want to be awake for it and I want to be able to be a part of it, but don't let me feel all that pain. So,
Yeah.
you were going to do yours naturally too, right?
Yep.
And so then did they have to give you Pitocin to get things going, or did they?
No,
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 because
because
you had
my
a
blood pressure
C-section.
was so high. They took me into the OR, numbed me epidural, right? And then they started the C-section. So there was
So
no.
you were awake for the C-section.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Also
Okay.
traumatic.
Also,
Yeah, I was just
also,
thinking that, like, to imagine. I mean, I know they put like a thing in front of you so you're not seeing your
You're not
belly
seeing
open,
it.
but like to just see people
well,
there cutting into you, knowing that your body is open and you're just like, so this is
I have
fun.
some pictures because a friend of mine. So the practice that I was in was a midwife practice, and they had a doctor, but the midwives were handling it, and they were supposedly covering for another practice when I went into labor. So we hardly ever saw them, but I labored for 3 frickin' days. 3 days.
Oh
Yes,
my gosh.
Oh
3 days.
no.
And it was so dysfunctional for the 3 days. And because I'm having labor pains and I'm unmedicated, we were doing everything, going in the bathtub, doing, everything that you can do. And
Unmedicated
finally,
labor for 3 days. And this was your first son?
my first son.
I don't know
And
how she had a second one.
I know it took me 4 years to decide to do the second time because I thought I can't go through that again.
Mhm.
But what happened was uh, the finally the nurse practitioner comes in and she goes, I think he's stuck. I'm like, you think? Um, and he came down. You know how babies are supposed to come down head first
Yeah.
with their face to your back. He was coming down the other way, military position. Military, you can relate to that, Stephanie. And so what happened is the my pelvic pubic bone, he would come down and his chin would get stuck on it and he couldn't
Oh
come
my
down.
goodness.
Which had to
So
be traumatic for him too, right? Like his
Yeah.
I'm
birth
sure.
canal and,
And
being
they
stuck.
have the fetal monitor on him and everything, and I'm thinking, man, I just want this kid out of here,
Yeah.
I don't care how you get at it. Just get him out.
Yeah.
And so what happened is then the midwife comes in and said, well, we really should we're going to put you on Pitocin and see if you push even harder if it'll happen.
And
So
they
they
couldn't go in and flip because I know sometimes they can
I
do
know I've heard
that.
that, but no, the
Probably he
midwives,
was too far down.
he
Mm,
was so far down. So
yeah.
then what they did is they said, well, we're going to, after the Pitocin didn't work, they said, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a C-section, but the doctor's not here. I'm like, what? So I had to wait. They had given me Pitocin and told me to stop pushing. And I'm like, I don't know if you've ever been on Pitocin, but you cannot stop pushing once you're on that. And so I
Whoa.
had to wait for almost an hour and a half for the doctor. It was at another hospital doing a C-section and came over. And I remember they were all in the operating room just sitting around going, watching me and saying, is the doctor here yet? Is the doctor here yet? It was horrible.
That makes you feel safe.
Yeah. And so finally, the doctor shows up, and then, of course, they give me an epidural. And then this is the worst part. I had a girlfriend who actually turned into a nurse, but she wasn't a nurse at the time, had taken pictures of it. So I have pictures, Patty, of beyond that blank, that piece of lint, what is it,
Yeah.
towel or whatever
Fabric.
they put there,
Yeah.
drape. And it's very interesting, because they take your intestines out and throw them on your stomach.
Sure,
And
sure.
then right, it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
But he was so stuck that they could not get him out. So I remember them taking him and thumping my body on the table, and all of a sudden, boom, all this blood came flying, and my husband's sitting next to me. I
Oh,
look up and he's covered in blood.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I'm laughing at this. I wasn't laughing years ago.
No,
no,
no.
it's like
Well,
a
it's
horror
been some
story.
time,
And
so
then, on top of that, fine, he's born. And then the doctor, takes the baby and checks him out. And then, of course, they look at me and they say, Jan, you've grown a ovarian cyst that we need to take out. So we need to put you under. So they had to put me under, take the cyst out. And then when on my way out, I remember in recovery, the doctor said to me, she goes, Jan, I had to take a lot of the ovary and I'm not sure you'll be able to ever have children again. I'm like, hey, well, this is all great news on me. So far, this is a stellar of a day. And
oh
so,
my God.
so then the saddest part, he had something called, uh, he had transposition of the great arteries. So the two major arteries in your heart were reversed.
Oh
And
Mm.
no.
he was 2 days old and he had open heart surgery.
Oh
So,
Wow.
wow.
so he had open heart surgery. We were so fortunate to have this doctor, Hanley, who does transpositions, and they were moving the coronary arteries over, and he was in a study. But they basically put you on a machine where it cycles for you while they're doing the heart.
Yeah.
And he was 9 pounds, 10 ounces, is how big he was. He was
Oh, no
huge.
wonder he was stuck.
Wait, ouch. And so, anyway, so after, him having the surgery, the doctor said it's good that he was that big because it wasn't like a 2 pound baby like you
Yeah.
had, Stephanie,
Mhm.
where, you can hardly see things. And
Mhm.
so he was switched over at like 2 days old. And I remember lying in the hospital because I was recovering from my surgery. And I remember my mother calling. This is perfect for this episode. My mother calling, and she said to me, Jan, I'm so sorry to hear what's going on. And she started recounting her whole experience with her first son when he died
Oh,
to me.
right
And this
then,
is three
in that
days
moment.
after
Yeah.
I had Luke. And I'm thinking, I can't believe she's talking to me about this right now. And all she kept saying is, make sure you get some help. Anyway, but that's, my poor mother. Anyway, but that story will live in the history. And I don't usually tell this story to anyone, Stephanie, just because it's a nightmare. And my dear
Huh.
friend who is a nurse said, Jan, whatever you do, because I was going to try to do a home birth. She said, Jan, please don't do a
Wow.
home birth. Please don't do that. And at the last, I thought, okay, I'm going to do it at the hospital since it's the first one.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I was in the
definitely.
hospital, but the practice that was covering me was absolutely inadequate. And it was in so much trauma and pain afterwards, coming home from the hospitals, and Luke didn't come home for at least 2 weeks. And then just what it was like having a newborn that had open heart surgery. He was
Right.
so
Yeah.
unsettled. And it was really a tough go for the first time. That's why, Stephanie, it took me 4 years to ever decide. My husband's like, let's have another baby. I'm like, are you
You're like,
kidding?
you have another baby.
You have it. I'm not doing that. But
Yeah.
I did find I was 37 when I had Luke, and I was 42 when I had Zach. And I
Wow.
found a doctor that would work with me because mostly when people get C-sections, they always say you have to have a
Right.
C-section after it. And I looked for a doctor that would do it so that she would give me a VBAC. And I successfully had Zach as a VBAC,
I don't
believe it
know
or
what that
not.
is. What is a VBAG?
Vaginal birth after delivery, VBAC, they call it.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. And and he, gosh, she took him early because he was such a big baby too. Big baby. And he was like 8 pounds, 8.5 pounds. She took him early so I could have him vaginally. And when I did, I remember my husband was looking at him in the nursery, and the nurses said, "Is this your son?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "You tell your wife, congratulations, he's got a huge head." So but this doctor was great. She managed the whole thing. And this is
Wow.
why I'm a big proponent to go to a doctor, especially for the first child. Because if your mom, like your mom, Stephanie, she's blipping them out, boop, 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 yeah, once your body's used to it and you can tell what it's going to do,
Right.
but it's like a box of chocolates. You never know
Yep.
what you're going to get.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
Anyway, so I don't usually tell that story because I don't want to scare mothers, the first time mothers, because they're all like, oh my God. But that's why I think getting a real good OBGYN to work with you is so essential.
But I
Yeah.
think it's important too, Jan, like, for people, like I didn't know going into my experience, you didn't know going into yours. It's not that you wouldn't do it knowing, the experiences that we've had, but it's, being able to go in knowing what the risks are,
Yes,
right? Knowing what the potentials are, or if XYZ happens, here's what your options could be. And I think just having more and more information and more experiences to be
I
known
agree.
is really important.
Yeah. Now, I had amniocentesis done for both of them because I was
Mm,
over 35, because I
mm,
was really clear, and people probably won't like to hear this, but if it was going to be a Downs child, I really was going to choose not to have it.
yeah.
And I really, so I had all that testing done. But if I'd had an ultrasound done of my son Luke, they would have seen that he had transpositions of the great arteries, and it would have been a whole different experience. And this is why you're saying, information and a good doctor that really watches. So when I had Zach, they did an ultrasound just to make sure that he didn't have it. Of course he didn't, but it's so interesting to me how much technology has changed. I mean, I'm thankful that Luke was born when he was, because the kids before him, years after him, they stopped doing that surgery because the children needed new hearts. So, of course, that wasn't great to hear when you
Mm,
realize you have a son who has um, um, cardiac, issues. So, but
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, today this technology is so different. I'm a grandmother now. She's 9 months old, and when Quinn went through she's an ideal person with pregnancy. She had some morning sickness, but then she went into blossoming, looking great, glowing, they talk about that. And she had the baby, carried it all the way, went to Mount Auburn Hospital, had an epidural, boom, 2 hours later, the baby came out, baby's perfect. I'm like, how come that didn't happen to me? Patty, this is where I always say to you, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen to me.
Right? Really, Jan, that's another example of
So, but
that.
she went to a doctor and her OB-GYN really, did all the proper things. And, I don't know. I didn't really have a great OB-GYN. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Did you like your doctors that you were going to, Stephanie?
I did. She was great. However, she sent me to the hospital, came and checked on me the first few days, and then goes, "Okay, I need you to keep this baby in because I'm gonna go out of town."
Oh, oh God.
And so she was gone when I had my baby, but the team that took care of me did amazing and did
That's
great.
great.
And I'm very, very thankful for all of them, the nurses, the doctors. I was at Good Sam here in Cincinnati.
You have good
Um,
hospitals there.
and they have a really great NICU.
Yeah.
Um, it funny little ad lib to my son's birth and timing was that I don't know, you guys not being local may not know. So Cincinnati Zoo has a very famous hippo, Fiona,
Mhm.
because she was
Oh.
born as a preemie.
Oh.
She was born right after my son. And so there was this whole big thing about this preemie hippo at the Cincinnati Zoo as my son was in the
In the
preemie.
NICU. Hmm.
And they said that there were a lot of children's hospital doctors that were working on Fiona, and my son had some doctors coming over to help work with his scalding staff. And I was like, maybe they shared doctors. So Fiona has a very special place in my heart,
I love that name, Fiona. That's
not just
great.
being a local hippo, but just she was kind of this like hope for
Yeah.
me, even though she was a hippo and it had nothing to do with my baby. But there was just this shared story, which was really kind of cool.
I love
That's
that.
great.
So
Yeah.
you guys have to look up Fiona the hippo.
I will.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I've seen that on the news or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
But anyway, so do
Yeah.
you have any tips, Stephanie, for when women are trying to be pregnant the first time, or for care and how to pick a gynecologist? I mean, we try to talk about resources that people need.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the point you said, Jan, is making sure that you feel comfortable and you trust the team that you're working with. And I would say because women don't tend to share scary stories, like you had said, is I would start asking, hey, I
Yeah.
want you to tell me the good and the bad. Just
Yeah.
ask all the women in your life because I think the more that you know, the more you can prepare, again, not to scare you, but to be informed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point because also, yeah, if you had, I mean, again, your situation was so positive in that you had people that were like, go. Um, but had you had these conversations and met people who had preeclampsia, and you might have immediately yourself been like, oh, wait, I remember so and so mentioned XYZ, and you might have identified that, you know? So
Right.
I think
I
that's a
might not
really
have had
good,
swollen ankles for a week. I could have gone at the first sign
yeah,
and said, I just want to make sure that this isn't something to be worried about. And could
yeah,
it have turned out differently? You never know.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, I think my daughter-in-law who went to this gynecology practice, they had an evening where they called it Meet the Doctors. And
Mm,
you got to meet with each one of them, and they all say, we don't know who you're going to get, but when you go into labor, you may get doctor this one, this doctor, and they all introduce themselves. I didn't have that.
I
I
love
didn't even
that.
know the doctor that delivered my son.
yeah, I didn't either because I
Oh,
met her
And
when it happened.
it was really nice to when she was telling me about that, I thought, wow, that would have been great, to just feel a little safer about everything. Okay, I know this person is this doctor was at some other hospital and she was covering someone else, and it was just kind of a mess. But anyway, so I think really having a team and meeting them, isn't that a great idea? Meet the
Yeah,
doctors. I thought that's
yeah,
definitely.
great.
I love that.
Or
Yeah.
meet the midwives, one or the other one. Yeah, I mean, probably a doctor if people want to do midwives. I don't know, how often do you know, Stephanie, and friends of yours that have had kids, do they do midwives or does everybody go to a gynecologist obstetrician?
I know some people who have doulas
That's
along with
Doulas,
amazing.
their like birth
along with it.
doulas with their gynecologist. But no, I haven't heard a lot with midwives.
Hmm.
Um, but I also don't have a
Yeah.
ton of friends having babies either. So
Yeah. How about you,
Yeah,
Patty?
I was gonna say the doula aspect of it, and that's, I mean, a cost, right? And that's a, if that's a privilege to be able to have, but if you're in a position to do so and have a doula, I think the benefit of that is they see a lot of births, so they see a lot of things that are happening there with you through a large part of your pregnancy and the birth and after many of them, and helping kind of initially right after as well. And they
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of
Right.
resources. And
Right.
so again, that's a place of privilege to be able to afford that. But if you're able to do that, I think that's great. But I
I
think
mean,
in general, go ahead.
I think doulas, or get me wrong, help with breastfeeding too, if people are breastfeeding.
Yep.
And, I know some women who, I didn't have any problem with it, but I know some women who had inverted nipples. Have you ever heard
Mm,
of that? And they could not breastfeed, and they were struggling with it. And so, doula does help them with that, which I think is a
yeah.
great service,
right.
Yeah.
especially, and I'm a big fan, I'm going to say, of at least breastfeeding for 3 to 6 months, because it passes on a lot of the immunity through mother's milk, and
Yeah.
I think that's important. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine's a doula, and she's a newer friend of mine, so I'm really just starting to learn about that. And
hmm.
she does overnights with new
Oh, nice.
moms and stuff. And
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, so she'll be there and helping overnight. And I think that's a really amazing gift to to be able to
Hmm.
have for yourself in the beginning, and yet helps with all that stuff, especially when you're going in and like if it's your first and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing,
Right.
and to have
Right.
somebody who's like, you're good, you're fine, or like,
Yeah.
here's, that
Well,
sort of
Stephanie,
thing.
were you able to breastfeed, or did you not?
I attempted to breastfeed, but he never would latch. He was because for one, he wasn't able to bottle feed or breastfeed until a couple months after he was born because it was
Right.
all feeding tube.
IV.
But I pumped, and so he still had all breast milk up
Hmm.
until I think 6 months.
Hmm.
Even though he never latched on and was able to breastfeed, he was still
Yep.
fed with breast milk,
We have
which
another
Great.
similarity, the same thing, because when I had Luke, because I had been on all this, surgery after taking that ovarian cyst off, then what happened was, I was on these medications, for pain, and they
mhm,
didn't want any of the breast milk to be put in Luke after he had open heart surgery. So they fed him with a bottle, and he got so used to eating with a bottle that he never wanted to latch on. So
yeah.
I did the same thing as you. I pumped my breast for, I think it was like 3 to 6 months or something, and fed
Yep.
him that way. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Which is
boy, talking about
exhausting.
feeling like a failure,
Yeah, yeah. And
you
it's
know?
exhausting to pump and never get the connection that you get with
Yes,
breastfeeding, but just knowing it's
exactly.
important. And yeah, it takes a toll. And like I think to your point, Patty, with the post-birth doulas, because actually I have a client that is, and it's been really cool to hear some of her stories. Um, but just to be able to be there with like the postpartum and to normalize things and to
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like have a woman not be alone in that process. And I
Yeah.
know husbands can be great, but like they don't have the information that a doula would have,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Or even another,
That's
mother.
another
Yeah, I
resource.
mean,
Yep.
even having a friend who's a mother, I mean, that
Mhm.
has some time to spend with you, and
Yeah.
I think which brings a great point of community in
Yes,
general
exactly.
is, again, I speak from somebody who's never had a child and never chose that route, but community is a big deal, and motherhood, from everything that I hear and understand, can be incredibly isolating,
Hmm.
and
It
so
is.
having your community and reaching out to them and making sure you have that connection
Yep.
so that you feel less alone and you have people to trust and go to, and trust when people, and this is for everyone in general, not just in this situation, but if your people are telling you you're not a burden, if you reach out, trust that,
Yeah.
because I
Hmm.
think a lot of us don't ask for help with our friends and our family and our community because we worry that we're asking too much or we're a burden. And I think that's such a negative thing that we do. And I think if there's somebody there being like, hey, whatever you need, tell them what you need and
Hmm.
don't be
Yeah, that's
afraid
great.
because it's not forever. you're not a burden, quote unquote, forever. It's you need help during this period, and you would do the same most likely. So I think that's a really great kind of direction to think of when you're in that position if you can't afford external help.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, all I gotta say is it is definitely a passage. Some women have it easy and some women have it a little bit harder and some people have it like quite an experience. And
Yeah.
it's but you look at I look at my son now and I'm thinking, this is amazing.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
look at your son, Stephanie, and I'm sure he's only 9, so he hasn't really, be a young man, but it's like you think after everything I went through, it's really worth it.
Yep.
The bottom line, it's like worth it.
Yep.
But nobody, that's the thing is my husband, he's like, let's have another child. It's not kind of like they have like, I'm like, I don't know how compassionate he was about any of that.
Yeah.
I was just pretty much swinging on my own. So,
It's so
Yeah.
funny because my husband was the exact opposite. He was like, I was like, I want to have the experience. I want, right? I was in denial of everything, of how I almost lost my life. I wasn't in denial about my son and his trauma, but I think I was definitely in denial about my own. And I was like, let's just do it again. Let's have another one. I was on that path, and my husband was like, you need to give me some time.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it.
It's definitely worth it. I mean, I think
Oh yeah.
in retrospect, looking at it, even then that having Zach and having him finding a great doctor to work with me and having him and he actually he actually ended up having never what do you call it? When he was born, he had jaundice. So he
Hmm.
ended up getting very sick with jaundice
Hmm.
and ended up going to a children's hospital like when he was 3 days old. And
Oh my goodness.
I was like, I was like turning into a permanent fixture there. And but I look at that now and I think it's just that it's a miracle that really having children and birthing them and raising them. And then of course you and I, Stephanie, what do we do for a living? It's all those
Help people go.
parents
Yep.
that just don't quite know how to be good parents.
Right.
And the kids
Yeah.
have some developmental trauma, but it's life.
Yeah. Well, good job, you two, making it through those traumatic experiences, and thank you both for sharing them
Yeah.
because I think it is important that people hear the stories and for those who have had those stories and might feel alone and their
Yes.
traumatic birth stories to hear some
Mhm.
other
Absolutely.
horrifying experiences that they can relate to in some way and know that, that can be normal birth too.
Mhm.
Birth is not just in the movies where a woman's screaming and breathing heavily for a little bit and ta-da, there's a baby.
Oh,
There's
I
a
got to tell you, I watched the movie Hamnet. Are you guys
oh yeah, I
familiar with
haven't
that?
watched it yet.
I
No.
watched it because my husband's gone for a couple of weeks, and I thought I'm going to watch that. It got an Academy Award. This woman has a baby in the middle of the forest. So, and I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, that just isn't possible. She's struggling through the whole thing, and I'm thinking, okay, I guess did they do it that way? Anyway, it's a little crazy. So I wouldn't suggest anybody or recommend that they do something like that. But
Do
one thing
not
I
go
have
to
to
the
ask
forest and have
before
a
we end,
baby.
Stephanie, I think your point about the shame that goes with mothers, because what we hear is all the good stories and how everything looks like happy babies and all that stuff. And there is no shame. I mean, in comparing yourself to other, it's your journey and get support. And it's the shame of how you're supposed to be doing it as a mother. So
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there are certainly uh communities out there and support groups out there. I know that with the NICU there were some that were offered. I never chose to engage in any of them, and I wonder if I had, would I have processed things quicker? Um, but it's definitely something that again, with technology and things and being more available, is growing and allowing people to have community of grieving the loss of the end of your trimester. It's
right.
something my husband couldn't understand, but
yeah.
other women who might have experienced it could really validate and affirm, just like we
Yeah.
talk about in Hawkeye, just to be able to sit with you and normalize that this is part of the human experience for some people. And It doesn't make you, like you said, Jan, a bad mom or a failed mom. This is just your experience and having to
Yep.
process through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for coming on. I guess we like shared our stories. I hope I didn't share too much, but
Oh, it was great.
some of
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I mean, you have to laugh or you cry all the time. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for
Yeah.
coming, and thank you both for sharing.
Thank you,
yeah.
guys.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like what you've heard, please share it with friends, subscribe, and leave a review.
And remember, information shared on this podcast is not medical advice. If you have a concern about your physical or mental health, please seek support from a professional.
If you have a story you'd like to share about things your mother forgot to mention, you can apply to be a guest.
We'd also love to hear a quick 90-second thing you've learned in your life.
You can find links to both of those over at our website at
thingsmymotherforgottomention.com or in the show notes.
Thank you.